The first thing is what's the offense looking like? And Dak's quote that's going viral says, funny, this is the Texas Coast offense. Kind of like the West Coast offense, but Tex Coast. I think we need to shorten it to Tex Coast, by the way. Texas Coast is too much.
Yeah, like Tex-Mex.
I mean, although Texas Toast, we got a little alliteration going on there, but I think Tex Coast works. He says, we just named that, the quarterbacks. It's got definitely some West Coast principles, but has a little bit of what we've done in the past and just obviously marrying them together with a lot of detail and maybe, in a sense, a system that's not out there. So there you go.
They're reinventing offense here with McCarthy and company. Look at that.
Well, a little bit of a hybrid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. Mike was talking today at the podium about the play calls and how different it is working with certain quarterbacks, and Dak's really picked things up really, really well. I will say today I was pleased to see a lot of pre-snap movement. A lot.
Hello.
So we'll see if that translates, but that was one thing that I took away from today's practice.
Is that that getting set and then snapping, or is it like already in motion, like at the snap in motion kind of stuff?
Pre-snap gets you to declare one way or another. Two guys moving,
and the defense then is having to counter.
Yeah, but what happened? It got the defense in trouble a little bit today.
It did. They jumped.
Amazing how that works, man.
Yeah, they were getting it. They were trying to struggle to adjust a little bit, with some of the stuff that they were able to do.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a Tex Coast offense, Brian?
Never have. I was part of a West Coast offense, though. One of the originals. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about in general about the idea of trying to marry the two and come up with a hybrid type system?
I think they're just trying to help Dak the best they can. I don't think they completely want to go away with the things that they know that were working well for them. I think that they have an idea of how they want to run the ball with Schottenheimer. I think they want to do that, but some of the passing concepts I think probably will be a little bit of the same. I think they're worried more about how they need to run the ball. If they were going back and looking at the analytics, what were our struggles? It was like second half of the year, the last 2 years, couldn't run the ball. So maybe it's like, okay, Dak can handle this aspect of the passing game, but we need to figure out a way to be a little bit more physical with the running game and maybe be a little bit scheme better with the running game.
I would like to think that that's the biggest difference, right? I mean, that's what Brian Schottenheimer's calling card's been, and especially with all the shuffling that they're doing and trying things out along the offensive line. I think that's something Mike Solari's trying to get a feel for, but you'd like to see, hey, this is a running game that started off hot and has faded the last 2 years. Some of that's due to injury, but they've got to find a way to have this thing last the entirety of the season with some new wrinkles and some freshness on the approach.
Ted Wynn and The Athletic did a nice deep dive on last year's Cowboy rushing attack, and I was pretty surprised at the amount of, it seems like, predictability. Where the scouting report was probably out, man, and these guys weren't helping themselves. Like their tendencies, and every team has tendencies for sure, but I think it became a little bit overboard where tell me what the down is, tell me if it's under center or shotgun, and I can tell you what the run call is going to be. It's going to be an outside zone if it's under center, an inside zone if it's a shotgun. And when you look through, and Ted Wynn did a great job on this, and just seeing, it's like, man, there were some things that Kellen Moore was probably doing there that was just playing right into the defense's hands. They knew what was coming on a lot of your run calls.
I think there's a lot of players in that building that are not upset that Kellen Moore's not there.
It was a huge issue in 2021 as well. I remember the media peppering him with questions in his little offensive coordinator press conference that they do on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Like, hey, here are the stats when you run outside. Here are the stats when you run inside. Why do you keep running inside so much? And he was like, well, you guys don't get it. He was... he was quite confident at the time. But, Brian, I want to ask you, do you think it's in Dak's football DNA to be a Tex Coast quarterback?
I'll tell you what, man, anything in his DNA I'm all for.
There you go.
Yeah, just be competitive. I want these coaches. My biggest concern is that, and I've said this before, and if you're new to the program, welcome. I'll say this about it. What I'd like for them to do is help them the best help the coaches help him the best they can. However they do that, I do have my concerns about the turnover on the staff and all the moving parts. And, I have total confidence in what we've seen with the defense and how they handle things. There's not a lot of turnover over there.
Well, that's what Bobby Marks was talking about. The key with the Heat culture over the years is just continuity.
Continuity.
And you shake that thing up, and you're inviting quite a bit of a learning curve again.
You could be in a situation where exactly what McCarthy and Schottenheimer want to do works, but does it work 2 years from now, 3 years from now? That's the concern. It might be one of those things where McCarthy has to do this in a year, and if it doesn't work, you move on.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe their plan or what they want to do will be better. Maybe not this year, but the following year, or the year after that. We've seen that with the defense. The defense has gotten better every single year with Dan Quinn being at the helm. The offense goes to a certain level, and then halfway through, it seems to fail. I think that's the question, the offseason question. And they thought the offseason question, the way to answer that was to change all the coaches on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good decision.
We'll get to the rest of this Cowboys news here in just a second. The Messi news is going official. Even SportsCenter's breaking in now and confirming it. And he said he did not come to the USA for money. If you missed the report earlier, Saudi Arabia offered him $500 million per year.
Unreal.
To play there. It was 3 years, $1.6 billion, and he chose Inter Miami. So he's coming to the MLS. I checked last night when this was in the rumor stage to see if we could get an FC Dallas Inter Miami game on the sched, maybe Toyota Stadium. Not there.
Damn.
But I think a lot of people are going to be willing to travel for that.
Well, pull some of your soccer strings and make this thing happen, Dawson.
Let's go. Yeah,
let's
come on.
GBag to Miami.
Let's bring Messi up there to Frisco.
Let's figure it out.
Okay, Michael Gelkin with a tweet. Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott on CeeDee Lamb. I'll say it. I believe it. I think he'll be the best receiver in this league. Confident, smart. He's really only scratched the surface in what he's capable of doing. This is just the beginning for him. He's been in the NFL 3 years, right? CeeDee Lamb. Now, if this was 20 years ago, we were talking about this is going to be his breakout year. He's finally figured out everything. But, in the NFL now, guys have an impact in their rookie year. And if they're not great by their third year, it's almost done with. Like, you're peaking in your third year. So, top receiver in the NFL, I think at this point that would surprise me. But just the fact that he's close enough. I've been one of CeeDee's biggest champions over the last couple of years through his struggles, so I'm happy that he's here.
Likewise, if he can build off of what he did last year, which was, even if he didn't get any better than what he was last year, you're still talking about an absolute guaranteed number one wide receiver. It's tough in this day and age to be the best receiver in the sport because there's so many ridiculously dominant receivers, but we have seen a guy like Devontae Adams take him a little bit before he became, Devontae Adams. That's one example. I do think you're right. For the most part, though, you're seeing these stud receivers come in and pretty much having immediate impact. But I also think we undersell what CeeDee Lamb's done throughout his entire career here. The expectations were so high. So he's obviously come in maybe a little bit short of that outside of this last season, but he's still been really dang good.
Yeah, he's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and I think that it's pretty comparable to DeAndre Hopkins in his first 3 years. CeeDee had about 150 more yards his rookie year. Hopkins had over 1,200 yards in year 2. CeeDee had over 1,100. Year 3 is when Hop exploded with over 1,500 yards, and then CeeDee Lamb had over 1,350. I think that's a pretty good comparison. And to me, I do think CeeDee Lamb, number one, you're right. That's going to be tough to do. We're kind of in a golden age right now of receiver. But I mentioned it, I think it was last week. I think he can sniff the top 5 this year.
Wait, let me ask you guys this question real quick, if I could. Paying him $26 million a year or paying Diggs $21 million a year? Which would you feel more comfortable with?
So I generally, in this day and age, I think it's harder to find a dominant corner than it is a dominant wide receiver. So generally, I would rather pay my corner, but for this specific instance, I'm not paying Diggs. I'll pay Lamb. I don't. Diggs is not a championship winning player. He proved that in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'd probably go with CeeDee Lamb at 26 instead of Diggs at 21.
And I trust Dan Quinn here's Izzy McQuamu, here's Deron Bland, we'll see what happens with Eric Scott. But, and who knows if Dan Quinn is here for the long term, but he's here now, so I can use that as Dan Quinn finds these guys and they can play.
Yeah, it's tough to find corners, but I don't think that Trayvon Diggs is a player that you can't win a championship with. I think that he is. I think he's one of the best corners in the NFL. But for me, I'm paying CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I think he's just a little bit better at his position, but I don't want to get rid of Diggs. I think he has the potential to get so many picks in any given year, especially if the other corners can cover, and he's got high volume coming to his area. He's going to take a ton of those out of the air.
But Dawson, I'm going to take some of that Diggs money, and we're going to go get some bona fide studs on that offensive line for you.
I know.
Okay, I'm trying to butter you up over here.
I hear you. I wouldn't oppose you on that. If that's what you want to do, I could get with that plan, especially with how good this team drafts at corner. Dak on Cooks, it's beautiful. Real speed. For him to be able to do it every play, every route, the start of every route, the cornerbacks defense, they don't know what they're getting. It looks the same, and I'm thankful he is here. That's that deception that we're talking about. Have fun trying to defend these guys, and now you have a guy that can legit take the top off the defense. Shireen Williams here at minicamp today had this observation. Besides adding a kicker, I think the Cowboys need another running back. Jones doesn't play special teams and was inactive for the Chiefs most of last season for a reason. They're going to wear down Pollard without some help. There is a report the Cowboys are interested in Dalvin Cook, multiple outlets picking that up. I don't know how legitimate they are, Brian. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, but Dalvin Cook would be a good player for this team.
No, he would. And the thing about it is it's anytime you ask them about money and cap space and things like that, they'll just tell you that it's already earmarked. So, where's Dalvin Cook in his thoughts about how much would he like to play for? It's the same thing you think about with Hopkins. Guys like that, they are not going to come off their plan of we just mentioned about guys having to sign. They got to do things with Dak. They've got Parsons years from now that they have to deal with here. So, anytime there's that cap space, you just think it's gone. And, if Cook wants to come in and say, I'll play for this, and it fits into what they could budget for that, I think there would be some interest. But I didn't get the vibe that they were interested at that current price.
Yeah, I think the running back market is so down that it might be a situation that Dalvin Cook could be on the table. What is it? 3 years and $15 million is market value for Dalvin Cook. 3 and 18.
Yeah, I think he'd get anywhere
not
from
huge.
4 to 8. But yeah, I mean, $8 million is kind of where the market capped out. He's interesting, but no, I don't see the Cowboys swimming in those waters. I still think he's going to get more than what the Cowboys were willing to give him.
I mean, yeah, the Miami thing seems like it's pretty real. Playing with his brother in Buffalo seems like it's pretty real. The Cowboys are always in the conversation if the money is going to be right, but the money won't be right, and I don't think it should be right. I think you've seen the obvious decline. I think he can help you, but not at that money. We've seen, if you believe in the idea that over the last 10 plus years, you're winning a Super Bowl, and then you're looking at your salary cap and you're seeing, okay, yeah, I was paying my running back like $2 million or less.
Yeah, to me, it
Super Bowl teams aren't paying 4 or 5, even though it's not that much. It's like even 4 or 5 is too much if you're going to be a Super Bowl champion.
And to your point, they did it. They did it with Pollard, right? He's getting $10 million from me. There's no reason for him not to be your bell cow. You've got to have him, and I think this is an agent thing. You tie the Cowboys there with Dalvin Cook. Hopefully you raise his market a little bit. Nobody that actually covers the Cowboys is saying the Cowboys are interested in Cook. In fact, Calvin Watkins today went on Sirius XM radio and said that the Cowboys aren't even going to bring Ezekiel Elliott back, even though they don't want to put the bye-bye on that.
I think they'll end up trading for a veteran next year, and that's probably the smart thing to do, like one of these low-paid veterans. He can still perform, not on a playoff team. It seems like, teams are having success with that path.
That might be the one position they add before we get to the season. You might get through training camp, and we'll see what happens with Jones, see what happens with Davis. Mm-hmm. I think Davis, as much as we heard about him spitting the bit, before the 49er game, I feel like that with the new offensive staff and stuff, he might feel like that he has a better shot to do what he needs to do. So we'll see how this, as we get through training camp, if it doesn't look like that they have a suitable backup for Pollard, then I could very well see them making a deal. Maybe a surplus defensive lineman they have, surplus offensive lineman they have, young for young, a young lineman for a young back, something like that. I could see that happening.
I think that's exactly what they need to do, because right now, if your options are Dalvin Cook and Zeke, the options aren't good enough. We got to get to camp, see who has extras. Maybe we start the season and see who's not a playoff team and is looking to part with a guy that has some speed. That's what I'm looking for.